Morning, I'm John Dreesen, your lay leader. You've seen me up here before. Maybe you've had enough of me, I'm not sure, but here I am again. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Pottstown. We, by way of being part of the UUA and being who we are a welcoming congregation. We believe in the power of love. We believe that there is probably one higher spiritual power, but we don't know all about that spiritual power, so we go in endless seek to find that, drawing from many inspirations throughout the ages. We also believe that no one gets punished. We believe in the universalist concept that a loving higher power would not send someone to a place often described as hell. That seems like an awful thing for any loving God to do. We believe that God is love. So we hope you find that to be appealing to you. Hope that you find the service to be spiritually uplifting. They change every week because we draw from many sources. So with that being said, we welcome all. Do we have any announcements for the benefit of the fellowship?
Morning, I'm Laurie. I forgot to bring the dolls this week, but we are going to attempt to make some dolls for an organization called Health Partners International of Canada. They distribute these dolls in medical kits that go around the world to challenged populations in war-torn countries and poverty-stricken areas. And we have some interested knitters and crocheters. So next week after potluck, we're going to have a little instructional session if anybody would like to join. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kay. I'm going to reinstitute the filling out the potluck contribution on the Sunday before potluck, just so we don't have 10 main courses and no salad. But anyway, all you'd have to do is put your name, and if you're bringing a main course or a dessert, we don't really care what it is, but just so we get like a bit of everything. Okay, thanks. I'll bring it by after the service.
Hi, I'm Diane. I'm standing in for Monica today. The Goddess Gathering is gathering today after happy hour. I think we should meet here around noon. So any woman that wants to and is able to, please join us. And see you there. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Miranda, and I just want to let you know and remind those of you who probably already know that next week is a potluck Sunday, and we'll be holding a UU 102 class, which is for just finding out about UUism, and also in the 102 classes included a little bit of history about this fellowship and also about our polity. So anyone is welcome to come, and what you can do is enjoy the potluck and then grab your dessert, and we'll meet in here at 12 noon. And bring your dessert with you.
Okay, so I guess you can say we feed the soul and we feed the stomach both. The stomach kind of needs to be towards the right direction. So, chalice lighting, Chloe, as we tend to call upon you to be our chalice lighter, we may have to use the igniter we haven't lit the basic, like around someplace. Oh, thank you. Well, there we go. So our chalice lighting is one I've read before, but I think it's pertinent to me today, and I think it means a lot. This is from Albert Schweitzer, who, whether he was one of us or not, he certainly was in his spirit and soul. 447, at times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. And now is that time where I will do it. We should all do it, just to turn off my phone from making noise, because it's embarrassing when that happens in the leader. And we'll ring the chime, which will bring us into the more spiritual portion of our service. So I have two readings, so they're both going to be coming from the same source. Being as inept as I am at making our printer work at home, I took pictures of them on my phone, and I have to go back to the first page. I have a bunch of pictures of what I'm going to say. This is something from a person who is an incarcerated individual, and I think you can get a better sense of what it's like to be in prison if you don't hear from a person who's been there, in this case, for a long time. So just absorb what I'm saying. Both readings will come from the same source, and I think it will help prepare the way for Reverend Cheryl's comments that are up to come. Although I'm no stranger to prison, I still find myself scanning my surroundings as if seeing SCI Chester for the first time. I studied the bars and the windows, obstructing my view of freedom, the rusted locks that trap me in my cell, the blank white walls winding throughout the prison. Sometimes I think about the psychology behind the color choice. Oddly enough, the blankness resonates with me, reflects the emptiness I felt for nearly a decade of my 27-year sentence for murder and weapons charges. In earshot of my cell, I hear a frustrated father desperately trying to be the disciplinarian from a prison phone. Another man who's clearly creating outside human connection he can't seem to get through. About once a month, he makes several calls back to back, but he never gets an answer. As I make my way to the day room, every step comes with a different odor. Overseasoned processed foods, deleted cleaning chemicals, misery, and the faint odor of urine coming from some of the elders who can no longer control their bladders. Many of these men are serving life without the possibility of parole. In Pennsylvania, life means life, or DBI, death by incarceration. In the afternoon, on the day room ceiling, I count 20 cameras. They remind me that nothing in here is private except my thoughts, and even those don't feel safe at times. And watching the CO that sits behind the desk watching me makes me anxious, even though I've done nothing wrong. I shift to my seat, growing more uncomfortable by the second. Hyper-awareness like this can make the mind fragile. If you don't tend to your mental health properly, you're more likely to succumb to the psychological warfare of prison life. To keep my mind strong, I focus on being proactive. I've become a certified peer specialist, certified fitness trainer, a published writer, and an Eastern University student who will graduate in August. And yet, I still feel like an animal here, something like a horse that they're trying to break. Sometimes when I sit in the day room, I watch my peers maneuvering through the human traffic with a sense of urgency, but going nowhere fast. In an attempt to disrupt the monotony of the prison, we try to create our own personal routines filled with exercise, enrichment programs, and constant work. Some of us play cards, watch sports, participate in hobbies such as sewing. But sooner or later, these routines also become monotonous. This is part of the prison the media doesn't talk about. Boredom and stagnation. There is just no escaping this perpetual state of sameness because every aspect of it invades your space and overloads your senses. To people who are free, our collective boredom may seem minute. The life on this inside isn't so much of a physical battle as a mental one. It's the little things that begin to chip away at your humanity and take a toll on your psyche. And to be continued. So I tried to pick hymns that offer, in a sense, hope, as if we were in a prison and we were prisoners who needed someone to give us hope by way of hymns. So please rise as you're willing and able for hymn 2,205, which is Amazing Grace. And as many know, the lore is that John Newton, who was the author of the words you just sang, was allegedly a slaver and was on a slave ship transporting Africans to America, and had one of those moments that people have where he got the word from above, and that allegedly was the impetus to write the words that you've just been singing. So we have two things. It's a time for all ages, but with no apparent pressure, Sarah came in, I saw her carrying a violin case, and I said, well, do you want to play something for us today? And without pressure, she said, yes. So Sarah, I give you the floor. She has her violin, and that will precede the moment for the story for the children. She is a far braver young lady than I would be. As I snagged her on the way in and saw her in the violin case, I said, well, do you want to do that? And she did it, young lady, yes. Well, thank you. We look forward to presentations in the future as her skills will continue to grow. And now is officially the time for all ages.
Library thought I was crazy when I was looking at her books this week, so I think I had about 10 or 12 on the table that I was looking at before I decided on this one. So the book this week called Change Sings. I can hear change humming in its loudest, proudest song. I don't fear change coming, and so I sing along. I scream with the skies of red and blue streamers. I dream with the cries of tired and true dreamers. I'm a chant that rises and rings. There is hope where my change sings. Though some don't understand it, those windmills of mysteries, I sing with all the planet and its hills of histories. I hum with 100 hearts, each of us lifting a hand. I use my strengths and smarts, taking me to make a stand. I'm bright as the light each day brings. There is love where my change sings. I show others tolerance, though it might take some courage. I don't make a taller fence, but fight to build a better bridge. I talk not only of distances from where and how we came. I also walk of our differences to show we are the same. I'm a movement that roars into springs. There's a wave where my change sings. Change sings where? There, inside of me, because I'm the change I want to see. As I grow, it grows like seeds. I am just what the world needs. I'm the voice where freedom rings. You're the love your bright heart brings. We are the wave starting to spring, for we are the change we sing. We're what the world is becoming, and we know it won't be long. We all hear change strumming. Won't you sing along?
So now is the time in the service where we ask for some audience participation. And we'll have that later, by the way, after the sermon. I blocked out some time since Reverend Cheryl's sermons often lead to the need for some conversation, I think. But this is time where we ask for one of the three things that help us function here, which are time, talent, and treasure. This is the latter, which is money that helps to keep us functioning. We ask that you support us in the best way you can, within your means. We appreciate any amount, nothing is too small to help us. Okay, and I've been blessed by an excellent assistant today, since I wanted to clone myself, but I thought that would be unpleasant for many reasons. All right, so I'm going to pick up the next reading where I left off before we sing our next hymn. Make sure I'm in the right place to continue here. Bear with me here. And of course, glasses will always help at my age. One second here, this is technology, and technology is always baffling. Here we go. Okay, here we go. Quite to myself here. Anyway, gotta make it bigger. All right, so the problem is every vehicle in this expressway is trying to collide with me, including police cars. I can't get up to the nearest exit. I have nowhere to go. I can't get away from the noise of the 81 other men who currently live in my unit. Everyone yells even though we're right next to each other. It's like they've forgotten how to communicate. Maybe this stems from the feeling of never being heard in the first place. But this is controlled chaos. None of us are living, we're merely existing. As when I look to the left of the day room and then to the right, I see several elders roaming aimlessly, complete devoid of optimism. I'm sure I can make out in this room with afterwards before this happens to me. Hope we all make it out of this room. And this is, I'm going backwards, unfortunately, so bear with me. I always hate being violent this way, but sometimes I'm more aggravating than others. Once when I was coming from the gym wearing clothes drenched in sweat, a CO demanded a strip search. I had nothing to hide, but the idea of peeling off my wet clothes and then putting it back on was particularly annoying. The CO threatened to pepper spray me if I refused to search. To avoid misconduct, right up and tripped to the hole, as I was told. But since he called in reinforcements, I had to strip in front of 2 officers instead of 1. In that moment, I felt defeated and dirty. I wanted to rebel, lash out even. But I chose simply to comply because these COs hold the power to keep me incarcerated for longer. And giving into my anger would have affirmed the common stereotype of prisoners that were violent animals and therefore should be treated as such. I wonder if people out in society truly understand how much willpower, docility, and turning the cheek it takes to avoid trouble day in and day out. While I know what my actions will be, I have no control over how people will respond. If someone chooses to walk up to me and randomly assault me, I can't follow my natural instinct to defend myself. I'm expected to do nothing. Okay, give me 1 second. And I'll finish one last section, kind of going backwards, but I think they're all pertinent to this experience. And because we're forced to ask permission for simple things like going to get water, we've returned to a childlike state. We have to wait for to be fed. We're told when to go to sleep. This lack of autonomy makes it harder for incarcerated people to adjust once they re-enter society. And we're going backwards, so bear with me here. To me, the most dehumanizing and shameful experience in this room without doors is a strip search. While officials claim to only be looking for concealed weapons and contraband, it's clear to me this process is also designed to make us feel powerless. Not all strip searches are identical, but generally speaking, a strip search begins with a CO escorting you into a room where you'll have to remove your clothing piece by piece until you're completely naked. Next, the CO will tell you to stand with your feet apart, spread your arms and hold your hands open with your palms up. You will also have to lift your arms up to expose your armpits and run your fingers along your teeth and gums. As if this all wasn't invasive enough, the CO will command you to lift up your penis and testicles. Then he'll have you turn around, lift your feet and show him your soles. Worst of all, you'll be required to bend over, spread your butt cheeks, squat, and then cough. And that concludes that reading. Sorry if it's a bit graphic, but I think it does, for me, certainly explain the dehumanization of living in an incarcerated situation. But let's rise as you're able to and sing, hopefully, a more happy hymn, 108. We're thrilled to have Reverend Cheryl back, and I just have two readings before I introduce her. So this is the first comment about incarceration in America in general. Overall, there are now more people under, quote, correctional supervision, close quote, in America, more than 6 million. They're in the Google archipelago under Stalin at its height. And second, which is more pertinent to where we all live, Pennsylvania has an incarceration rate of 659 people per 100,000 people, including prison, jails, immigration, detention, and juvenile justice facilities. Meaning it locks up a higher percentage of its people than almost any democratic society on earth. So kind of, I have other statistics here, but that would just be boring. So ponder on that. Reverend Cheryl finished her career as a Lutheran minister and is now, I believe, working as a paralegal in her retirement. Sometimes think about what to do in the future. So Reverend Cheryl, without any further ado.
Good morning. I'm not sure when I first started thinking about the criminal justice system. It might have been watching early episodes of Dragnet, a police procedural TV show, or maybe it was those episodes of the first Perry Mason TV drama. Perry Mason was a defense attorney assisted by his loyal secretary, Della Street, and his intrepid private investigator, Paul Drake. And together, they could win any case in an hour. I can still hum the theme song for the series, but I will spare you that. Maybe TV shows are the reason, but I suspect the real reason, or at least the first one that really caught my attention, was the O.J. Simpson murder trial in 1995. Simpson, a famous football player, had been charged with the murder of his wife and one of her friends. Coverage of the trial was all over the media. Simpson had a legal team that couldn't be beat, and he was acquitted of the charges. Over 100 million people watched or listened to the verdict. I'm guessing it was at this point that it began to occur to me that the criminal justice system wasn't necessarily fair, that justice wasn't blind, and that if you could afford to pay a legal dream team, you might be able to get a different verdict than would be the case if you were just some poor soul off the street. So today I'm inviting us to think together about our criminal justice system as a whole and changes that might need to be considered. It will be a very high-level overview looking at law enforcement, the judiciary, and what happens post-conviction. All of that preceded with just a bit of religious background. When I told my legal supervisor that I would be doing a 20-minute or so presentation on necessary criminal justice reforms, his response was, 20 minutes, question mark? So we'll be flying through this. And if there's anything that I hit that you'd like to think more about later, let me know and we can do more time on that. Two additional disclaimers. First, the religious background will come from a Judeo-Christian viewpoint. That's the scripture I know best, and quite honestly, we don't have time to cover all the bases. If you have some other perspective, I'd love to hear it in the discussion. Second, I'm going to say next to nothing about discrimination. I'm convinced that how we look influences how we'll be treated in the criminal justice system. And that's true for racial differences, class differences, and gender or sexual orientation differences. We could easily do a whole half hour just on that, as well as a half hour each on law enforcement, the judicial system, prison reform, and post-conviction issues. But it's Super Bowl Sunday and I can't stay that long. So let's get into it. First, a religious perspective on criminal justice. There are those who would say that what is often called the New Testament, stories about Jesus and later, is a more loving ethic than what is presented in the Hebrew Bible, also known as the Old Testament. The Hebrew Bible is simplistically presented as the eye for an eye perspective, and the New Testament emphasizes love one another. But that's really not fair. In the Hebrew Bible, an eye for an eye was actually a more merciful perspective than the other option, which was present at the time. This was a more vengeance-motivated ethic, that if you killed one of my family members, I would move to wipe out your entire tribe. So given that kind of retribution or perspective, an eye for an eye actually showed restraint. In the Christian scripture, while Jesus doesn't really say anything about criminal punishment, he does advocate forgiveness in general and certainly shows compassion for those who are imprisoned. He admonished his followers to visit those held in prison, and he forgave a thief who was crucified next to him. Jesus saw all around him as children of God, deserving of love and kindness. But for me, the most challenging and telling perspective comes from the Jewish prophet Micah, who asked, "For what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God?" And that verse raises the $64,000 question. How do we balance justice and mercy in today's criminal justice system? So let's start by thinking about possible reforms in law enforcement. If you have been watching any news or reading any news since the George Floyd protests in 2020, you would have heard about the defund the police movement, advocating that police departments be defunded and that money be reallocated to non-police forms of public safety and community support, such as social services, youth services, housing, education, healthcare, and other community resources, in the hope that such a relocation would result in healthier communities and less crime. While I'm not convinced that total defunding is helpful, I think the case can be made that addressing crime needs to involve teams of police, mental health workers, social workers, and social services. In a society that grows more complicated by the day, there is no way that law enforcement officers can be trained to handle all the situations that are out there. And there are situations where I believe it would be more helpful to initiate a team approach. Another thing I wonder about is what kind of screening is done when recruiting law enforcement officers. Maybe more time should be spent on weeding out potential bad apples, and as some have advocated, making sure there's a reporting process that prevents inappropriate officers from moving on to other towns or geographic areas when they are let go. At the same time, I can't imagine what kind of stress police officers or law enforcement folks operate. And I find myself asking how we can be supportive of those who undertake this difficult profession so that unreduced stress does not lead to bad decision-making with terrible, unwanted results. We could be spending a lot more time on policing, but for the sake of moving on, let's consider reforms in the judicial system. In many places, the judicial process faces an overwhelming number of cases. And this high volume is often due to current national drug policy and zero tolerance policies for certain offenses, which doesn't leave the judges very much time at all to spend time on any particular case or focus. And national and state drug policy can complicate the system. The legislature sets the rules about what is criminal. As you may know, as some states legalize the sale of marijuana, that complicates the criminal code. So now, if you have a small amount of marijuana, is that criminal or medicinal? What is an illegal amount? And it varies from state to state. And how these questions are answered and the stricter the laws are, the more cases are going to end up in court, overloading the system, which is why some states have moved to more lenient standards in lower level offenses. Overwhelming caseloads mean that instead of a jury trial, the vast majority of cases are handled by private discussions between defense attorneys and prosecutors. And while there are social and personal benefits from that, The now common practice may be less transparent and raises some questions about the fairness of the conversation. Over the past generation, the judicial process has been impacted by changes to sentencing policies, such as moving toward mandatory minimum sentences for specific convictions. Such changes are because folks were concerned that different judges would be giving different sentences for the same offense, which was seen as being unfair. But while equal treatment is important, sometimes you have to look at the specifics. It's kind of like telling your 3 kids that they all have to go to bed at the same time. While they may be making the argument that specifics, like age, would argue for some variability in the rule. You've probably heard things like this. In some ways, we're back to that concern of how you balance justice and mercy. Another reform move in the judicial system is the move towards specialized courts. We already have family courts, bankruptcy courts, juvenile courts. Some places have courts to deal specifically with drug offenses or lower level offenses or first offender courts. And these specific courts allow the judges to specialize with a better understanding of the offenses or the individuals with which they're dealing. And again, more time could be spent on the judicial system. But we're going to move on to what happens post-conviction. As John talked this morning about prison reform, there is certainly at least a half-hour conversation going on there. The need to reduce prison overcrowding and improving conditions. In the United States, 1.9 million people are locked up in more than 6,000 correctional facilities operated by thousands of agencies. That's about 1 person for every 100 adults. We lead the world in imprisonment, and that's not a statistic to be proud of. We also have private prisons, which is another whole category. Which private prisons do you think are going to want a lessening of convictions? None of them, of course. So, and I believe I'm gonna get the county wrong, but I know the Northern County, there was just an expose that a lot of the juvenile detention centers were private and were found to have all kinds of violations of care. So again, easily could spend a bunch of time in it. But let's think this morning about some of the reforms that actually help with life for those who have been convicted, specifically those which lead to higher employment of convicted adults. One is the improvement of educational opportunities in prison, because the better educated a person is, the more likely they're going to be able to have jobs, have income, and not reoffend. One of the things I learned about recently was the opportunity to start the licensing process for certain vocations in prison. And I checked Phoenix, the state prison in Montgomery County. And here, inmates can participate in programs leading to a state barbering license and international computer driver's license. Do you have any idea what that is? I did not. I thought it was maybe getting your driver's license online, but what it actually is a program in IT, which makes a lot more sense. So now you know. An Eastern forklift certification and a program in custodial management. Prisons housing female inmates often have programs leading to a license in cosmetology, often some kind of mani-pedi kind of thing. Hair braiding, I didn't realize, is also a big program that folks can get involved in prison and be licensed. Other reforms leading to improved employment are legislative reforms, such as the Clean Slate Act. Did you know that you can go online easily and find out the criminal convictions, if any of your friends, neighbors, or family members? The Clean Slate Act allows for those who have completed their sentences and have kept their record clean to be able to go through a court process to have that information under seal or hidden. In some cases, it will be sealed automatically. It would still be available to certain employers like school districts or other employers who mandate FBI background checks, but it would be closed to private citizens. Sealing would not be possible for those with convictions that involve children for sexual abuse or other very serious crimes. The other lengthy process that's available to those with a criminal background is to apply for a governor's pardon, and that's what I help with. To receive a pardon, an individual would need to have a clean record and be able to demonstrate that they have taken responsibility for their actions and have turned their life around. If the Board of Pardons, a panel of 5 folks, agrees that a pardon is deserved, and the governor agrees as well, that person's criminal record may be erased in the county court through a process known as expungement. Why is this important? Well, much to my surprise, having a criminal record not only impacts on possible job opportunities, but housing can be turned down because of offenses, particularly drug offenses that happened years and years ago. A criminal record can also affect reputation. I've heard clients say, I don't want my kids to know about this. And they want that record gone or erased. A pardon can offer new life for those who receive it. Just for fun, I checked with Montgomery County to see if they need additional volunteers to serve as pardon coaches. Those folks who would help walk people through the pardon process. You don't have to be a lawyer, you don't have to be a paralegal, you can just be a normal person. At this point, the group working with Montgomery County is too busy working with recent changes in the clean slate process to recruit and change new pardon coaches, and I suspect that's going to be the case across Pennsylvania right now. But give it a while. And if you're interested, check with whichever organization is providing free legal care to low-income individuals in your area. If that's something that sounds interesting to you and you need help making connections, let me know. Like I said, you don't have to be a lawyer or have any kind of legal background in order to be a pardon coach. So that is our very quick romp through the criminal justice system. I can hear my high school English teacher in the back of my head telling me that my topic was way too broad. But at least we've made a start. There's a lot of information out there. If I've tickled your interest and you want to dig further on any of the topics I mentioned, or if you want to do some time on any one of them, just let me know. So John said we have time, so go for it. Or other things that I may have skipped, of which I'm sure there are plenty.
So I'll walk around with the mic so we can get this to people who are listening to us online. Just a quick comment, there's something called homiletics, which was part of Reverend Cheryl's training many years ago in seminary. That's the art of doing a good sermon. That's what I heard, and makes me say, boy, if I give a service again, do I have a long way to go? So I'm going to make a quick comment since I'm the first to go here. I deal with injuries from the Reading School District in my occupational medicine work. And, there's a lot of violence in the schools. And I once called the superintendent's office and spoke to the secretary for the superintendent and the school board. And I said, there's a lot of people getting hurt, like the people who do security and the like, and teachers. And they said, we're trying to think outside the box. And I said, the box you have to think outside of is too broad. And that's the city of Reading. Because there are many, families where there's one parent who may not be present, there's language issues, there's drug abuse. So unfortunately, we have a large generation of kids who are going to be brought up without that help, who will be, potential offenders. And so I'm told that when they have issues in the school, many of them have already been to juvenile detention, they don't really care, it's like a notch in their belt, and that's just kind of where their heads are at, which is really sad. I did see an injured individual who works at St. Gabriel's Hall. Many of you may have seen that. It's up on the hill in Oaks. You do a quick curve and up on the hill is this beautiful monastery-like place. Well, that's actually a place for last chancers, kids who are, one step away from really getting no help at all. And they're sent there by their school district, so I'm not sure if it's regional to the county. So I asked her, given that these kids, once you're 16, they're adjudicated as adults, and anything they do after that, they've already exceeded any efforts in the juvenile system, so there's nothing left for them at that level. And I asked her, given the fact that this is their last chance, how many of the kids actually stay and graduate? And the number was about 1/3. So even with the last chance, that's where these kids are heading. And so, it's a whole generation, I think, of the next level of potential crime for the future. And I'll also say, by the way, speaking for myself, I think this is a rich topic. As Reverend Shelter, one thing she didn't even go into was a whole issue with death sentences and what role that might play in the legal issue we are a country that has death sentences. Most European Union countries, among others, do not exercise a death sentence for anybody. So with that, I'm going to grab the microphone.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought, and I don't know if anybody knows, I suspect the number of juvenile convictions has gone up, but that's just my suspicion. I have no idea what numbers have done.
If anyone has a comment, I will invite you. I can't imagine that nobody has a comment. Flames. So we have the mother of the child that will do that. And let's say in unison, I kind of got a little behind, our extinguishing the chalice reading, which is in the order of service. So, already happened, we extinguish the chalice flame, but not the light of wisdom, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and in our hands until we are together again. And I didn't really have a benediction here, but there's one that I've read before, which was actually written, as I mentioned before, by the minister at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Reading, Elk Roosevelt Williams, which was a Church of the Atonement back in the Universalist days. It was Universalist Church. Love is the doctrine of this church, the quest of truth its sacraments, and service its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve human need to the end that all souls shall go into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God. And please enjoy the lovely piano artistry of our pianist.